Welcome to the very first structured episode of Wired Unplugged.
Structured episode.
yeah, that's what I've gone with. Yeah, an all new weekly gaming podcast from Wired Productions, premiering every Friday on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, anywhere a good podcast should be. I'm Jake Kulkowski, and with me is my valiant and powerful co-host Aaron Cooper.
It's the first time I've been called valiant, so thank you.
Oh, hey, thanks very much, man.
It's making my Friday so much more better.
Yeah,
so
cool.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, hey, I'm here for you, man. So each week we'll be giving you the latest, greatest gaming news, bits about what's going on in the industry, info from the Wired headquarters, and I think probably most exciting of all is that we have a slew of special guests joining us each and every week from award-winning actors, composers, producers, Wired Productions up at Echelon, the friends of the games industry, friends in the games industry, and they'll be chatting to us about all manner of things, you know, like how'd you launch a video game? How'd you compose the music for a video game? What's a video game?
Pineapple on pizza.
Yeah, there is some severely off-topic chat. As the episodes are sort of being recorded, it's getting to the point where, some of the conversations, I think one of the discussions that I had with Mikey Goodman coming up in a future episode was, can you have too much Christmas?
I am looking forward to finding out the answer to that.
We do have the definitive answer as well, actually. So,
is Mikey pro Christmas? Is he like big festive guy?
I don't want to say too much, but what I will say is that he did have for almost the duration of the interview a glowing, glittery snowman on show. So,
Mikey. Mikey Goodman.
Yeah, it will shock you. So So anyway,
look forward to that one.
Yeah, really. We better sort of get going. So I mentioned a sort of structured episode. It's because if you are completely unfamiliar with Wired, there is a sort of episode 0, maybe it's episode 1, which we have a chat with the Wired co-founders, and you can learn all about the Wired story from start to current, and you get a good insight as to who Wired are and what they do. Not some sort of like megalithic $70 billion takeover company.
We'll talk about that.
We'll talk about that in a little bit. So that's that. So that was a bit more of a free-form conversation, a bit of a convo. Whereas we've got segments lined up.
Jake, it was so free-form, I disappeared into the ether at one point. I never returned, but I'm safe.
Yeah, I think we addressed that, but just in case we didn't, Aaron's safe and well. He's right here. So look, and he's here for a very good reason. Actually, we got a couple of mainstay segments that you're going to get used to in a podcast every week. We'll be talking about a whole load of things, but Wired Propaganda is something that you are the chief minister of. So I've got a segment for this actually. Artist who recorded this, unknown currently. Well, not unknown. Maybe you'll find out in the future. I was going to make a joke about it being like a Cliff Richard B-side, but we did that in the episode that we recorded that didn't go out. So I'm going to keep you guessing. Anyway, here's the jingle, and then we'll get into Wired Propaganda.
Wired Propaganda.
It's good, isn't it, that?
Rick Astley, he's got some pipes.
Yeah, you know what? Versatility, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, Aaron, every week you're going to be telling us about what's going on at Wired, and I'd like to hear what's happening this week, our very first week of Wired Propaganda.
It's a big week, and it's actually a good week to be talking about this because we have our first game release in a little bit of time. It's very exciting. We're finally getting to a point where we can release the games that we've been working on. So the first one out of the gate is Avicii Invector Encore for MetaQuest 2. The reviews have been coming in. It's sounding positive and great. So the good thing this time around is, you have been able to play Avicii Invector before on the screens, even on handheld on the go on the Nintendo Switch. But why VR? And I think, similar to games like Tetris Effect, they are great as they are, but when you can lock yourself in isolation on VR and just take a moment to be alone with the music, the visuals, and how they all come together. It's a totally different experience. And I think the music of Avicii, and I think fans particularly, I think it's good to have a moment with the music that that legend gave us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think other VR titles have got a lot of music that's DMCA free or like royalty free and stuff like that. But dare I say, anything that's like iconic is normally like some sort of bolted on add-on. So yeah, 35 Avicii tracks in the Encore edition. And like you say, it's a game that's very much like Tetris Effect in the sense that you've got this sort of complete immersion, but you can play on I guess they're controllers, right? I don't really know.
Yeah.
Sound like I've never seen a VR headset before in my life, the way I'm talking about it.
Watch this newfangled technology.
Yeah, they're like the TV remote, but oh man. But yeah, it's reviews are coming in, and I'd a spin at this, you know.
Yeah, I think the important thing for people who are checking this out for the first time, you mentioned, most games have a few tracks in there, and but this is a full Avicii experience. So when Avicii was still with us, he worked on the game directly with the team at Hello There Games. They would do yoga and stuff together whilst he'd just strum on a guitar and do some, hey, what do you think of this track? So team getting a little insight into his upcoming tracks and stuff. But he was there from the beginning. It was an experience that he was very passionate about in terms of, okay, how do I take my music to the next level? What visuals can I add? How do people interact with my music? It's something I was thinking about. I went for a walk earlier just to get some fresh air, because that's nice. It's nice sometimes.
It is good to go for a walk.
The game has a narrative that runs through it as well, which isn't standard, music game fare. And I think there's a lot to, and this is something that he was a part of adding into the mix as well. And essentially, you as the player, you control the ship, which is your icon, right? That is the thing that is hitting the beats on the music and so on. But there's a pilot. There's a pilot in the ship, and she's on a quest across the galaxy, undertaking this massive mammoth task, all in the bid to find a chocolate bar. And what does that mean? I think as you play through, you get some insight into what the story is and what the journey is. But what does the story mean? Do like this was something I was thinking about, and it's like, well, there is this space cadet woman who is doing amazing things, flying through space on her own, soaring through magnificent landscapes, dodging danger, all in a bid just to get this one simple thing. And you kind of wonder, hey, is that a reflection on stardom and fame, right? That you are this epic icon and you're doing amazing things, but you can't just pop to the shop like a normal person and get a bar of chocolate. It's
it could be that. It could also be a damning critique of space food, which I heard is very samey and sludgy.
To be fair, actually, that's a very good segue. It's not something that was on for us to talk about, but Deliver Us the Moon with
very good.
Yeah, thank you. So we published, Wired published Deliver Us the Moon, and as part of that, one of the things that we wanted to do when we sent out press kits to creators and press is we got some real space ice cream. So these are ice cream sandwiches that astronauts eat in space.
Space
in all the
yeah.
And without damning it, I mean, technologically, it's great that this food can exist in space, but it's no
chocolate bar.
It's no chocolate bar. It's no chocolate bar.
So there we go. You can find out and unravel the mystery for yourself with Avicii Invector Encore Edition, which is released on Oculus Quest 2, Meta Quest 2, Facebook Quest 2 this week. So
Quest for chocolate.
Very, very good. To the moon. Okay. What else has been happening? It's been quite a busy week, I understand.
It's it's been a busy week, and Friday couldn't come soon enough, right? But no, it's been a busy week. It's been really great. So a lot of people may know that last year, at the start of the year, Wired held their very first Wired Direct show, which was streamed live across the ether, across the internet, across media sites and so on. And that was our first moment of showing all of these amazing games that we had on the roster that were meant to be delivered at this point. But COVID, our friend, kicked in, and it became clear that, rather than essentially the best thing to do with so many changes in remote working and so on is, okay, people are going to need more time. So it's important that the creative people have the time they need to make what they want to make. But the good news is that things are now getting back on track. So this year, Avicii is the first game out, and now more games are coming out in the next coming months for the rest of the year, which is exciting. So, the likes of Lumote, Martha is Dead. There's so much. The Last Worker. But essentially, in a nutshell, this week's been busy because we've had some digital press events. That's what I'm going to call them, digital press events.
Yeah, I think that's the scientific term.
Yeah. Usually in normal times, we'd be able to get people in a room and say, hey, these are our wares. Look at all the cool stuff.
Yeah.
Play them. Let's talk about them. Here are the devs. That's still not quite possible at this stage. So we've done a set of digital events with press and some creator friends, just to show off that lineup in a new way, as well as some other exciting bits. So it's been full on, all out action, and it's been busy, but it's been good.
That's quite a lot. That's quite a lot of stuff this week, to be honest. And launching a podcast. Do you know what I mean? Well, look,
did you ever watch Bernard's Watch?
You know what? I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I cried when I was a little boy because I didn't have it. Which is saying a lot more about me. This is a good way.
I'm a man now. Well, I say what you want. I could cry right now because Bernard's Watch would be useful. Wouldn't it be great to stop time and be like,
exactly. Yeah. Just as a bit of context for those that don't know, Bernard's Watch, like a 90s British children's television show about a boy called Bernard. I think he has a run-in with like a postal worker. Not a vicious run-in. It's quite a sentimental one in which I think he gives him like a stopwatch that can watch, right? Stop time. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, a pocket watch. Quite a nice ornate one, and it stops time. And if we all had the power to control time with Bernard's Watch, we'd all be a lot better off. But we don't.
Every one of us would do very different things if we could stop time. And I think it's worth pointing out that Bernard was very sensible with his time-stopping abilities because, he once went to the shop. He stopped time so he could have time.
Yeah.
He paid for his thing, even though time was stopped. He went to the shop.
Yeah.
He did all the thing, put the money in the till, and then walked away just so he had extra time to do homework or something. I don't know. I can't remember. Spoiler alert, though. Go on.
I was going to say, I kind of wish I'd folded this question into interview segments. Maybe in a different time I will ask, if you had the power to stop time,
like Bernard,
what would you do? Well, I guess it's a good time to remind everybody listening that we do have Doug Cockle coming up to talk to us about the Witcher, Victor Vran, all manner of things, really, tips to be an actor and that. It's good, it's quite good. He said to me that I asked one of the best questions that he's ever been asked. I can't remember what it is, by the way.
We're going to find out in a bit.
We'll find out in a minute. But he talks about all that. He talks about the really important things. Yen versus Triss. You know what I mean? Like his preference there for a virtual lover. There's lots of stuff on the way. But before that, we have like a sea of news to navigate. So should we go into the next segment with the next jingle?
Onwards.
Get ready for this.
News Week Stole from Google.
Another one there. That's good, that. Gladys Knight and the Pips, I think. Right. So.
What a throwback.
You've brought some news to me. It's kind of like I feel a little bit, even though we're in the first episode, I feel far too comfortable, like I'm the chieftain of a village, and you bring the news to me, and I just go, yes, very good.
Yes.
So what have you got? What have you brought for me and the people at home?
Well, I've stole some things from Google for you, Jake.
Okay.
And I thought you'd be interested in hearing why I've stolen. But what I think you might be more interested in is what The Rock is cooking.
That's good. That's a good one. Okay, yeah.
We'll just end the show. It's fine.
That's the clear peak, right? Okay.
Yeah, but we're going places. So, The Rock is hyping a brand new video game movie that he's involved with. There is not much news that we could steal around this, but he said it's a badass game that he has been playing for years.
Okay. That means, in a way, it means nothing, because what is badass? You know what I mean? But I don't know. I'll tell you something though. The Rock has been in games before, and he's been in films before about games. So I don't like Doom. Remember that with what's it, Carl Urban?
I'm gonna disappoint you. I did not watch that.
I did, and it was with as much peace and love to the director and writers. I was a bit like, why? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even as a bit of a kid, like. So I feel like a lot of video game films are a bit like a why. So because of that, you don't have to think very logically about this. You can go crazy with your suggestions and thoughts. It could be Doki Doki Literature Club for all I know. But what he has
that would be interesting.
That would be good. Yeah. I'll tell you two things that are curious when I was looking into this. Number one, legitimately about 5 minutes before we started recording, it was announced that there's going to be a sequel to the Mortal Kombat movie that came out last year.
I'm happy about that. I recently changed voice. I recently had a frog in my throat. Forgive me.
Yeah, Doug Cockle's got something to say on that in a bit. So
yeah. I bet he has. I was on a flight over Christmas. I went to New York, which was exciting. Yeah. And that was the first time I got to watch the Mortal Kombat movie, the new one, and I thought it was great.
You know what? That's somehow
it was good fun.
That's probably. I mean, I don't want to talk to you about it too much because it's probably not very relatable to people at home. But I also, on a transatlantic flight to Montreal, watched Mortal Kombat for the first time. I was pleasantly surprised. So yes. So I would happily sit on a plane again and watch The Rock in Mortal Kombat. But The Rock, I think this is right. I hope it is. I'm pretty sure The Rock was in Fortnite to some degree a few years ago.
He was.
He's part of the story, wasn't he? Canonically. Yeah. So I guess to some people, Fortnite would be pretty badass. So, and I guess he would have been playing it for years because he's probably.
How would you live action film Fortnite? Do you think?
This is what I mean. With great
The Rock just like building stuff.
With great difficulty, yeah. So it would be like a mix between the movie Battle Royale and
great film.
Like, I don't know, with some whimsy in it. And probably less exploding heads or whatever. So, like, it could work. It could work. I remember watching a film in the cinema with The Rock in called Walking Tall, and he had like
so good.
Can you remember that?
I love that. It was so. Yeah. It doesn't take itself seriously, but it was great, start to finish. I was there for it.
He had like a really long structural bit of wood that he was walking around with. Yeah. Fortnite's got a bit of that in as well. Exactly. Stack a couple of them in his arms. Maybe that was a clue the whole time. So
I love that film.
Yeah. So
genuinely, I love it. Love it.
So who knows? But it's interesting. I guess we'll find out soon.
I'm thinking, and I think he could, do a good job if it was part of like Gears of War. If it was a Gears of War.
He's got the chest for it, hasn't he? And
he does.
The haircut or lack thereof. It is that seems like that would be like a decent film, that as well. I mean, like it'd be like a bit B movie jank. Like I could see it working like a Starship Troopers type vibe, Yeah, I could see that happening. And the big thing is Dave Bautista has been a big advocate for these films. So if they collaborated and did something there, that could be pretty interesting.
Be like old days for them. Back in the ring together.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's it. Famously wrestlers as well, for anyone just completely out of context. I was going to say living under a rock, but I realised it would sound like an intentional.
No, that's brilliant.
Well,
that's brilliant. That's genius. That's genius. That's not a mistake. That's genius.
Thank you very much. So yeah, that's interesting. But we'll keep an eye on it. So what else has Google delivered?
Google has delivered some very interesting news this week, and I'm only bringing it up because there's a reason why, and I'll get to it. But essentially, Steam have announced the dynamic. That was what I meant. Did you get that?
Yes, it was Steam announcing dynamic cloud saves. Was that?
Oh, well done. Yeah, well done. You speak Bocce as well. So essentially, the reason why I wanted to bring this up is because we had a Steam Deck in the office for a couple of weeks now. Yep. I'm sorry you haven't been here, but been able to test out some of the games and put it through its paces. It's feeling good. But essentially what they've announced with the dynamic cloud sync saves, say that 10 times fast, is essentially if you are playing a game from your Steam library on your Steam Deck on the go, away from your PC setup or screen, the moment you put it to sleep, it uploads everything that you have changed, your settings, your save data, everything straight up to the cloud, so that when you go back to your PC, everything is as it was. You can resume, you're good to go, almost instantaneously. And it's the same in reverse as well. So if you're playing, let's say you're playing through Martha is Dead, things get a bit too hectic, just as an example, and you're like, oh no, I can't play it on such a big screen. I need to go sit in some well-lit area, in a daylight field or something. You can take it where you are, where you were, and you can carry on with your preferences and setups all in good stead. And I think that's what people needed to hear, really. The being able to take it seamlessly from one to the other. And I think this is why people enjoy the Switch so much, right? Is you're playing on your screen and straight away you can just be like, oh, pop it off and I'll go.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that you kind of the quick resume function is something that's happened in the latest gen. So and it's something I'm just so used to now. I don't know how I live without it. It's such a small thing, but if I put my PlayStation 5 on right now, I've genuinely forgotten what I last played. But it'll be there, and I press X, and I'll be straight in again, and I'm like, oh, cool. I don't have to sit through the load.
The convenience is so great, but do you know that the one downside it has for me is, growing up, I was a sucker for a very good title screen. Title screen music sets the scene and get you into it. And now that's for the most part.
That's true. That's true. But it's an obstacle now, not an event, I guess. Yeah. You're right.
There's one less thing there to get you in the spirit and mood of the game, I personally feel. But the convenience also,
it outworks. This is really cool. I remember Larian Studios did Divinity Original Sin 2 on Switch, and they had it so you could have your Steam save move over, which was great. I think it was one of the first games to do it, and I was like, if every game did this and every game was on the Switch, perfect. But then the Steam Deck was announced, and I was like, this was like one of the features that I'm thinking amazing, because no one wants to be, I don't know, you're 50 hours into a Total War campaign, and then you're away from home for a few days and you can't play it, but you've got you can play it, but you have to start a new save because your Steam Deck is not your PC. But that's a thing of the past now. That's a really great feature, and these are the little things that might not sound that exciting, but when you just spend a minute or two thinking about it, you're like, this is what it has to be. Yeah.
Even for the freedoms it gives you with your time, I don't know about you, but love games since very young, right? We both have. But as you grow up, you get older, people start to have families, jobs get busier, and so on, and there is less and less time that you can dedicate to gaming. But the quick resume features and what this is going to allow is actually, it's an aid to that, because I would never imagine that I'd be able to do this, or that I would want to do it. I'm at the end of Ocarina of Time on the on the Switch at the moment for the N64 online thing, and Yesterday, I did part 1 of the Ganondorf fight. He is dead. I've escaped the castle, and now I'm about to fight the end of his big beastly Ganon.
Yeah.
But in between that, I've put it in rest. So tonight, after this, I'm going to go and kill Ganon. It's this 2-day, 2-part spectacular. Just straight into the fight.
And,
there I am.
Yeah, exactly. In a world that was predating the old autosave and all that, so it's ace. This it's properly good. So yeah, nice one. That is a good bit of news. That's some,
It's convenient. It's convenient news.
What else have we got? What else have we got in?
Pokemon. Pokemon Legends Arceus is out.
Good.
People have been skeptical
Yeah.
about its quality.
Cautious.
The reviews have landed.
Yeah.
Cautious. The reviews have landed, and apparently it's the best Pokemon game in 20 years.
Wow.
And that to me is exciting. I've got my pre-order in.
Yeah.
But it's I think. But please don't attack me if anyone from this community listens. But the Pokemon community is very tricky, right? The first Pokemon I played was Pokemon Red because Charizard rules, and I was a youngster.
Same on all fronts. Yeah.
We've all grown up. We've grown up.
We've grown, baby.
We've grown up. We've grown up, and people become vocal in different ways, and they have different attachments to the franchise and series, and what they want and what they expect from a Pokemon game are very different to the new crowd, right? And I think the Pokemon community are passionate. Choose my words carefully. They are passionate.
Yeah, I would say so. Dedicated.
Yeah, they're dedicated and passionate, and I think it's been the same with the last few Pokemon releases. That pre-launch there is like doom and gloom of these are the issues with it already, even though you're looking at unfinished gameplay, and it's like why are people so keen and eager to attack before they get to experience it for themselves?
Yeah, you're quite right. And this was a huge potential breeding ground for potential negativity again, because it's them taking on a new style. So for those that are just unfamiliar with Legend of Arceus, it's an action RPG in like an open field system. So things are happening a little bit differently than the traditional tried and tested formula in Pokemon, which is, I guess, kind of a reason that people on one side of the debate are so quick to anger or critique Pokemon. Is because it's had the same formula for quite a long time, and when they do something, it's often viewed as like the bare minimum. So a very, very close friend of mine is like really into Pokemon. Like I don't know. I
don't act like you're not. Don't act like you're not.
Well, you know what? To be honest, like I played Pokemon Red and I loved it. And I'll tell you the truth, though, right? I guess this is a positive thing. I loved Pokemon Red. I 100% of it. I caught them all. You know what I mean?
Nothing wrong with blue. Nothing wrong with blue.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Other colours are available. But I got them all. And the last one I properly played all the way through and caught them all in was Ruby, which I think is the 3rd gen. Because there's Gold and Silver, and then I think there's Ruby and Sapphire. And then the 4th gen I didn't play is if you try and look at it objectively or whatever, is apparently the best one, the 4th gen. That's the general consensus. So I know that I'm opening up for some fierce debate there, but apparently
which pair was that? Which pair of games
is that?
Was
Diamond and Pearl, like the
Diamond and Pearl. Okay. So they're the ones that just got a re-release,
and they
on
did just
Switch.
they got like a chibi style remake thing.
Yeah. And this new one is canonically a prequel to those 2 games.
Yes,
it's set in the distant past when Pokemon and humans did not live on good terms.
In cahoots. Yeah,
they didn't live in cahoots.
Yeah, that sounds
there was
like
no
Pokemon
Pokedex.
a bit, doesn't it? Yeah. So yes, exactly. So it's a little bit more primal part of the lore, right? And and interesting because there could there could be a lot right with it, but there also could be a lot of things going wrong here. But I'll tell you something, just to harken back to your Ganondorf extravaganza. when I played Pokemon Red, I thought amazing, and then I played Ocarina of Time and thought, how amazing would it be if that and that became the next thing?
Yeah.
And so when the GameCube came out, and I was like, there's going to be a Pokemon game on the GameCube. Is it going to be like Ocarina of Time meets Pokemon? No, it's not. And now in 2022, we're finally here. So, and I think the thing to really mention for those that are interested, the reviews are extremely positive. It's like high 80s on Metacritic. I think it's like 86 at the time we're
86,
recording.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, there's tens across the board, baby.
10s, 9s.
A lot of 8s, which is why it's on 85.
Yeah.
But it's being received really well, and it's out now if you're listening. Yeah, exactly. So cool. That's going to be cool for a lot of people, and I'm interested to see what the Reddit Pokemon subreddit looks like.
Yeah, I mean, Jake, I've in a blasphemous move, that isn't even something I stole from Google. I just wanted to talk about Pokemon.
Well, maybe we need to rethink. The thing is, I don't have access to Gladys Knight and the Pips to get that re-recorded. So next time, don't let me know that you didn't get it from Google, because it's going to really ruin the jingles. I do have another one for the next segment, which it still isn't Doug Cockle. We're sorry to keep you waiting, but that's because it's
Doug's coming.
It's quite like half an hour long or something. You see, so stick with us for another bit of gamer news. But it's such an interesting bit of gamer news. It involves acquisition. We have a separate jingle kind of for it as well. Not sure about this one. Minor Motown sort of artist, never really blew up. When I got the vinyl for this to upload the jingle, it was kind of smudged, so I didn't really catch the artist, but I don't know.
Let's give it a whirl.
Yeah.
Deals for meals, deals for meals, deals for meals, deals for meals.
It's got a bit of Napalm Death to it, but
my assumption was Gloria Gaynor, but
you know what? I'll have a look. I'll get back. We'll look at that in episode 2.
We need to get to the bottom of
If
this.
you do know, please
point.
write in. Yeah. So that was
to where? Send an owl.
yeah. So deals for meals, and the implication there from the unknown poet is that with this deal, there will be a lot of meals, fanciful meals, being bought. I actually set off my. It was like, it's not Siri or Google. I've got like the Samsung. What's it like? Bixby. Didn't want to say it too loud in case I set her off again.
My phone
Anyway, so somebody's bought somebody, haven't they? Can you tell me more about this?
Yeah. So it's a big one. It's a big one. $70 billion have been spent on buying Activision Blizzard by Microsoft. $70 billion dollars.
If you
it's a lot of money.
constitute like a meal as like a chicken mayo from McDonald's, which is like 99p or whatever, like
I'm glad you brought up the chicken mayo, because I want to get I'm going to flip this back to you as well, because yesterday, or this week anyway, it was announced that there's actually going to be a chicken version of the Big Mac.
I rate it, and that's all I'll say on it. I rate that. I try that. But if you constitute a chicken mayo as a meal, that's 70 billion meals for this deal. So just to sort of throw it back to the jingle there, deals with meals, that's how many meals we're talking, 70 billion. So in future, I think that we need to have the chicken mayometer as a sort of
see if Neil can edit in. Chicken mayos.
Good luck. So this is absolutely the biggest acquisition I've ever seen. It's huge, and the implications are huge, and really this probably could have been an episode in itself.
Yeah.
Because it is gargantuan. However, everybody ever has an opinion on it, and has probably already covered it, to be completely honest. But it is huge. Activision Blizzard, of course, being a bit of a merger of two titans of the games industry in their own right. Activision responsible for tons of titles over multiple decades, and Blizzard being one of the most prominent figures in the space. You know, their titles were at the forefront of a lot of the online gaming scene, and
Diablo, World of Warcraft.
Exactly, World of Warcraft
Titans.
is kind of the archetype of a successful MMO, right? What the state it's in now. Everyone has their thoughts on that, but that really is like the the poster boy of MMOs. You know, they got some iconic franchises. The point being, so their merging was a bit of a shock when it happened, right? And for this to be just another sort of just another acquisition by Microsoft, which are on a bit of a shopping spree, I suppose, over the last few years, is it's staggering. What do you think of it?
It's a very complicated topic to cover, right? And as you said, it could be a whole episode on its own because there's a dark side to the story, right? In terms of everything that was going on at Activision Blizzard and the improvements that they're trying to make. And without going too much down that rabbit hole, Microsoft do have a very good working ethic and culture, and I think that they can help speed up that process, perhaps. And you have to wonder if you do work on the Activision Blizzard side, is it something that you say, I'm going to stick around and wait and see where this goes, or is the damage already done? But I do, I trust Microsoft and their internal working practices. Everyone that I know that works there is very happy, and they're very big on supporting mental health and employees and so on with childcare and all these things. They have a Starbucks in their office. That's
I guess that is comforting.
But so there's a dark side to it, and I do hope it is something that Microsoft can help ease out. I think the biggest thing about this as well is to mention that it's an intention of acquisition, right? That the deal hasn't actually gone through yet, and that's likely to happen in 2023 next year. In terms of it all being confirmed and official. A big interesting thing about this is, and I mentioned the dark side, but the big issue, concern, question is what happens to Bobby Kotick, and how that works out. At the moment, it's saying that he's going to report into Phil, Big Phil at Microsoft.
Big Phil Spence, probably one of the only people who can unironically pull off a leather jacket on a main stage. They were made for him. I thought that. But just as a sort of bit of context for anyone who's kind of not that aware, Activision Blizzard, of course, make fantastic games, but they have a sort of toxic internal culture, which is very well documented. You can find out more just by going on Google, which is where we stole this information from. But Bobby Kotick is the guy in charge, essentially. So by there being some accountability to another, this other being the fresh-faced, friendly leather jacket clad Phil Spencer, sort of the people's champ, a lot of good sentiment around him. You think that it could be a welcome change, and that's why you were wondering about the people who work at Activision Blizzard who are kind of getting to the end of their tether with all these things going on, might see this as a ray of hope, right? That's the general thing.
And this is the thing, though. I don't think you could ever say that, hey, getting rid of one person is going to solve all the issues, but I think it's a statement of intent that things will be worked from the top down. And it'll be interesting to see how that develops. But as I don't want to dwell too much on the dark side, because there are people out there that can talk about this so much more thoroughly and have done very deep research.
It deserves. Exactly.
Because we are talking about people's lives and stuff. So I think we should draw eyes to some of the potential positives from this outside of an improved working culture. And that is
the games, baby.
The games. And the one thing that stuck out for me, which excited me, was Phil said, hey, there are a lot of games that have been, and franchises that have been dormant with Activision Blizzard for a long time, and it'd be great to work with some of our teams, some of their teams, and see how we can revive them and bring them back. And there's one game in particular I want that hasn't been, it's a game that I loved growing up, and that is a new Lost Vikings. game. I don't know.
Yeah, I remember that game.
Yeah. Lost Vikings.
Okay.
I would love to see them pull that out and give it a new fresh coat of paint and a new adventure. It was one of my favorite games on the Super Nintendo growing up. And I think Blizzard may have included them in one of their online games at some point. I think as a playable heroes. I forget what game it was in, but I think a proper full game would be is one thing that every time Activision Blizzard do something, I'm like, are they going to do Lost Vikings?
It seems like a real nice option for them as well, because they could do it in a way that it doesn't have to be like quote unquote AAA. You know, they could
it's just quality bit of fun. Man,
you know, my favorite Activision IP I know is gone forever, really. And my favorite is actually FromSoft ended up doing some dev work on it, but it was Tenchu, the ninja series. FromSoft's Sekiro, Shadows Dies Twice or whatever. That was essentially, I believe this is right. They were attempting to do a Tenchu game. Out of respect, though, for the personalities that helped craft the Tenchu IP, they have now retired from the games industry, and as such, they decided to take it in a different direction and make it its own IP. But originally, FromSoft actually did some of the dev stuff on the Tenchu game. So my favorite game as an adult is the Dark Souls franchise and stuff, and as a kid, it was Tenchu. So for that to have happened, I was like, and then when I heard the reasoning behind why it wasn't happening, because apparently, Tenchu itself and the IP and the characters were a couple of people. You know, it's kind of like, you know, they say, you know, you're sold about Kojima. What is that? So it was kind of that situation, but less high profile. So they're just putting it to rest. Which so in that way, I hope we don't see one, because it'll be in a way a bit. So I mean, I should have looked into this a little bit more, because I'm sure I would have been able to find a couple of bangers in the Activision back catalogue. Yeah. Blizzard, though, on the other hand, just make another StarCraft in it, please. So that is absolutely chock full of potential. And again, send us an owl if you've got any bright ideas. That needs to be a jingle, doesn't it? Speaking of, I got one more. I got one more jingle before we move on to the big and beefy interview segment with our man Geralt of Rivia, aka Victor Van, aka Doug Cockle. So I'm excited for this one. I'm excited for this jingle.
Press the button, man. Do it.
What's in the box?
I love the high pitched, almost sort of.
It's Aerosmithy, right?
It's what I mean. It's got a bit of that. It's got a bit of that. So
it's got a bit of welly.
Yeah, I like it being high. So, what is in the box? And what's in the box? Sorry, for those that don't know, is where we talk about some of the Wired products that we're flogging in the Wired Unplugged podcast, because this is a Wired Productions podcast, guys. At the end of the day, we talk about Pokemon. We got to come back, so we're coming back round. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Usually, this would be the moment where there'd be a Manscaped ad, but we've paid good money to advertise on our own podcast.
Exactly. Premium prices. Yeah.
Really high prices. It's funded the rest of this year, actually. What a ripoff. So what is in the box? So the box itself is Martha is Dead. So Martha is Dead is launching in February, and a special collector's edition has just been announced, which is very exciting. So much hard work has gone into this. There's only going to be 1,000 units worldwide, exclusively for PS5, PlayStation 5. And in the US, you'll be able to, well, in the UK, let's start with the UK. That's where we are. We'll go to the US in a bit.
Yeah, they've had enough, haven't they, the US?
We can go first. They get the Mandalorian before us and all this stuff, so come on. Spoilers! Curse them. So in the UK, you can pre-order this exclusively on the Wired website straight away. Just go straight to the store and you're there. Pre-order it right now. And in the US, our good friends at Limited Run Games are going to be handling duties on that, which is, it's always exciting. We love working with them. They're such nice people.
Yeah, very respected in the industry
Yeah.
as well. Very good, yeah.
But again, this could be its own segment. It is its own segment, but it could be its own show. There is so much packed into this that it's madness. There's the soundtrack, which comes on a triple vinyl. We're both lovers of vinyl. I love spinning a vinyl on the weekend. That's a weird phrase, isn't
Spinning
it?
a vinyl.
I love spinning a vinyl on the
Gloria
weekend.
Gaynor vinyl.
She returns.
Playing the jingles on vinyl, yeah, that's it.
There's a metal case. There's a hardcover collector's art book. One of the things that I love most is that in the start of the game, actually, if you are watching or listening to this, if you go over to Eurogamer's YouTube channel, they did a fun live stream for the first 45 minutes of Martha is Dead, so you'll get to see this bit referenced if you want a point of reference. The reactions are great, and it's a brilliant stream, so do go watch it. But my favorite piece in this collector's edition is there is a book, and it's a replica of the book that's in the game, and it's the book that your gran reads to you at the start of the game, and it's this book that tells the folklore of the tale that the game surrounds. So the Woman of the Lake. Now I'm going to butcher this, so if Leo's listening, and he's Italian, so he would know.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah. So it's I don't know if to do an accent or not. It's do I do an accent?
Yeah, do an accent, because then you're gonna get extra points for the effort, aren't you? Don't be lazy and wrong. Be one or the other. Yeah.
La, 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 la. There's a lot of las in this.
Yeah.
La leggenda della Dama Bianca.
Oh, my Italian's a little
Legend.
rusty, but I think that means the Legend of the White Lady.
You're on it. And that's my favorite thing. So it's a full replica. So the story that you read in the game, it's an interactive scene. You can have this in real life, and it's beautiful. It looks beautiful in the artwork, and it is stunning. Also, a graphic novel.
Another book.
Who doesn't love a graphic? Yeah. But we're given all the.
But this one's
literature.
more graphic, yeah.
It's more. It's more graphic. I don't know if it's more graphic than the game. Different times, but essentially, this is a prequel to the events of Martha is Dead. So there's some story that you can get heads up on to help bring a bit more clarity to the opening moments.
That's nice. Yeah.
So it's a nice to have. There are tarot cards featuring the game.
That's interesting to me. I love that. I love the idea of tarot cards for this.
And again, they're in the game. They are faithfully recreated in real life. Because you have to remember, like LKA, they are genuinely masters of visual design. They know how to push Unreal to its limits, and their design team as well. The intricate levels of detail they've added to everything in the game, the locations, the characters, but the tiniest minute details on these tarot cards as well. They're geniuses. I love them. I love you, Luca. but there's so much packed into this, and if you go onto the Y website, you can have a look at what is in the box.
That's very good. No severed limbs. Which is like, I think
there's still time.
That's exactly.
Time.
And so, speaking of timings, Martha's Dead is available February the 24th on PS4, PS5, Xbox Series, and Xbox One family, Steam. But the edition is so jam packed of stuff, as you mentioned, that it's a few months after, innit?
Yeah. So again, just due to the state of the world, everything is still being pulled together for these. So. The collector's editions are those that are absolutely in love with Martha is Dead, and these are going to be available slightly after launch, but you'll be updated on a timeline for those.
I think collectors are pretty patient people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
collecting
I
stamps
think so.
is an instant gratification, is it? It's like,
especially just the level of detail and attention and love that has been put into this, and. People may say, "Hey, why are you doing a collector's edition for a brand new IP?" And actually, it's the belief in what this game is, but also a bit of love and respect to the devs as well. They've poured so much into this, and they've crafted such a beautiful world and a really interesting, deep, provocative story that it deserves this layer of love.
Cool. Well, that is truly a box full of stuff, man. to be completely honest. And can I just say, seems that we're all new here. That's it for the weekly segments. So now we've got the one last weekly segment, which doesn't have its own jingle.
Doug Cockle.
Doug, yeah, I should have made him record his own one, but I felt like that was a bit. Now, in this interview, which you're about to see, which I recorded about a month and a half ago, so you might wonder, oh, why does Jake's house look completely different? Don't worry too much about it. And if you're an audio listener, that doesn't matter. Doug Cockle.
Does your house look different?
Well, I've just moved in, and
there we go. There
was Remembrance poppy wallpaper all over my my house. Or it looked like bloodstains to some people. It was like real Rorschach test. But anyway, Doug Cockle recorded this with me. Not only did he have a cold and was having to take flu tablets or whatever during the recording, it was also The Witcher on Netflix, which he's not in for some stupid reason. Don't really know why. They just get him in. Like you'd get the real Geralt in, surely. Anyway, that was launching the very minute that we were talking, so you could hear his phone. I think if you listen carefully, going, you know what I mean? People like, "Where are you?" Henry Cavill saying, "Please reply to my text, Doug," and all that. So anyway, please enjoy the Doug Cockle segment. Neil the editor, let's go, baby.
Wired. Unplugged.
Doug, thank you very much for making the time to chat to me. It's The Witcher, at the time of recording, it's The Witcher Season 2 on Netflix launch day as well, so it's probably like, your Twitter's probably going to be on fire somehow. Every hour someone's saying, have you seen this? Have you seen this? But yeah, thank you very much. I'm really excited to talk to you about like a plethora of stuff, and I've tried to be as mindful as possible to not just talk about that one thing. So the Wired Unplugged podcast, we're talking to guests from everywhere about all sorts of things, but I guess the one cohesive part is that it's about video games. And, you know, in my day job, I work in the video games industry, and I work with video game professionals. And this question that I want to ask, first of all, is something that isn't the same for everybody at all. In fact, it's quite wild. So before we talk about your career and more specifically what you've got on the way, let's start at the very, very beginning. What are the first memories that you have of ever seeing or playing a video game?
Oh, wow. You're taking me back a ways. Wow, I can't remember. I mean, I grew up in the pre-home computer days. When we did things like play baseball in the street, you know?
Right, yeah.
So video games evolved as I grew up. Sorry, I was swatting at a fly.
Yeah. I thought that was the temporal time. Yeah.
Yeah. The temporal time shift. Yeah, so I seem to remember, I'm split on this. Either it was Pong.
Yeah.
You used to be able to buy a Pong console, and it was just a single console that played one game, Pong, right? And so I remember playing that when I was about, I don't know, 10 or 11 or 9 or 10 or 11 or something like that. But video game arcades started to come up as well. So things like Pac-Man and Space Invaders and Defender, stuff like that was in the arcades. And so I played those kinds of things, you know, quarter a play. Sorry, this is back in the States, so, you know, 25 cents a quarter. Yeah. And I think I was about 11 when the first real home video game console came out, the Atari.
Yeah.
And yeah, I had one of those early Ataris, and I used to play that at home. I think Pong must have been the first one. Yeah, well, but that or the video arcade, I'm not sure.
Well, it's really interesting that you say that, and I guess that's kind of the purpose for the question is because it's really different than how it is now, where kids are on iPads or whatever, like at the age of like 3 or 4, and they can download apps which has more content in an app than the whole Pong console that you described, right?
Yeah.
So I guess that kind of segues into something very interesting then. So you voiced Geralt in Wire Productions' own Arcade Paradise, right?
Yeah.
The world will learn more about that, like in 2022. And I was going to ask, like, if you have any, like, you know, anecdotes or you have any memories of arcades in real life, because for I'm 30, right? And like for me growing up, like the SNES and the PlayStation was out, so the arcades really, and especially being in the UK, an arcade is a bit more of like a seaside 2p machine. You know, it's like gambling light for children, isn't it? A little bit. So I was wondering what
machines and stuff like that.
Right, yeah. So I was wondering what your experiences were with arcades, especially, you know, growing up just pre-home consoles.
Yeah, well, it was the classic video game arcade. I don't know if those ever existed in the UK. I mean, there must have been one or two dotted around. But like you said, the concept of the games arcade is the, you know, the 2p machines, the maybe an air hockey table, but the fruit machines and things like that. So, you know, I grew up with the American kind of arcade, the one that you see pictures of, the one you see in the movies and stuff like that.
Right, yeah.
You know, people are standing, you're trying to get the high score and all that stuff on this, you know, video game thing. So yeah, I remember whole rooms full of video game cabinets with all these cool games in them and stuff. And I used to work at home. I'd wash the car and that would earn me $2. Or I would mow the lawn and that would earn me $3 or whatever it was at the time. I can't remember. And then you'd go to the arcade and you'd put your dollar bills into the change machine and get quarters. And then it was a quarter a play, you know? So
yeah, it's quite crazy to think. And that's something that I just find, well, I don't know, it's aliens for a lot of people, but also it's something that even if you lived through it, there's something that's like, I don't know, it must have been quite inconceivable to imagine a world from being in a room full of, you know, kids with 25 cents lining up to play Pong or whatever, where there'd be a dedicated industry for video game voice acting with the scope and the stories and characters who are as iconic, if not more iconic, than original film characters are these days. I was trying to think before this call of any original, like not based on like a superhero comic book or anything, like any movie characters that could be as iconic as some of the video game ones recently, and I've been struggling. So
you don't have to look far. Think about Indiana Jones.
Well, yeah, this is what I mean. Like maybe like, yeah, Indiana Jones and the likes, but since video games, since like in the 2000s, I was thinking what original IP is, like John Wick or something, maybe like that, but
yeah,
like if I went to a fancy dress party dressed as like somebody from a movie, aside from like the James Cameron Avatar, how easy is it? So and I think video games now, though, someone could go as Geralt and everyone would know, or Aloy from Horizon Zero Dawn or something. So what I was going to ask you is, when did that realization kind of sink in that suddenly voice acting or specifically in video games could be viable?
Well, it depends on who you talk to, whether it's viable or not, to be honest. You know, there are a lot of people out there wanting to be voice actors in video games. So in some ways, the market is absolutely saturated now. So whether or not anybody can actually make a living doing it is debatable. But I think it's been an interesting journey. I've been a professional actor for over 25 years. And relatively early in my career, I mean, it was 1999 when I did my first video game. Before that, I'd never even thought about voicing for video games. I hadn't really thought a lot about voiceover in general. I trained for stage, and I was very fortunate, and I, you know, got to work in film and television and other things as well. But Yeah, 1999, the first video game I did. It was a game called Independence War 2: Edge of Chaos, and I played the main character. And I literally, I was here in the UK, and I hadn't been here long, and I had met this agent, and she didn't know what to do with me because I was an American living in the UK. And she called me up one day and said, "There's this company in Harrogate, and they're looking for a genuine American to voice for a video game. Are you interested in going to the audition?" I said, "Yeah, sure. What? I like video games. I didn't even know there were voices for them." So I went to this audition and I got the job, and that's kind of how I got started in it. But I tell you that story because when I first started doing video game voices, it wasn't frowned upon, but it wasn't respected as a professional acting job. And over the years, gradually, it's become something that everybody wants to do. It's become viable, I suppose you could say, as you put it.
Yeah.
I don't know when that turning point was. I do think that games like The Witcher and other things that came before it showed the power of voiced characters in video games, the potential of it. Or rather, maybe games like The Witcher are actually the full realization of that power.
Yeah, absolutely. And something like that now, I think, that people will have inspirations and the people can draw upon performances. Whereas I guess, if you're part of that kind of first, I wanted to say first wave, but in the pandemic, it seems a bit insensitive. But if you were part of that the first generation, then it's very difficult. I was trying to think again before this of any characters that had really iconic voices in the night, like maybe Duke Nukem or something like that. But
well, there were those, but there's also things like Mario. It wasn't a fully voiced character, but that character had a voice. Charles Martinet is a fantastic actor, and he has his voice is iconic as Mario and Luigi. I think he plays somebody else as well, but in the Nintendo world. So there were voices in video games. It's just that they tended to be kind of limited to the 16-bit possibilities.
There was definitely not as much scope as now. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about then, like, just non-voice acting, I suppose. You mentioned that for many years you trained as an actor and been in some pretty successful stuff. You're still you wouldn't pigeonhole yourself to say that you're a voice actor now, like many. You in fact, like, there's something very recent you've been a part of, Doubt Buys the Whiskey, right? Or something like that.
Yeah, it's an independent short film. Yeah, that was really good fun.
So when you're voicing characters, did you feel like that part of the, I guess, regular or non-voice acting 3D process, something that you could draw upon? Do you think that that's something that kind of gave you an edge over just picking up a spec sheet and things like that? Do you feel like you could transfer many of those skills over?
Yeah. Well, I mean, acting's acting. It's bringing a fictional character or non-fictional. If you're playing a real person or a person from a historical person, acting is bringing a person to life. There's a definition of acting that I really like, and it's acting is living truthfully under imaginary circumstances. And I'll add to that, to tell a story. So no matter what you're doing as an actor, you're doing essentially the same thing. You're trying to tell a story, and you're trying to make whatever the character you're playing, you're trying to make that character accessible, understandable, interesting, relatable, all of those things. So, I trained for stage, but everything I learned for acting for stage is directly applicable to what I do in my voice acting. Identifying who the character is, where they are, what they want, who they want it from, how they're trying to get it, all these kinds of things that, when you're training, you break it down into a process that you go through methodically. But then as you gain experience with that process, it just becomes part of the work that you do, and you do it quickly. because certainly for video games, you have to. Often, when you get called in to do a video game, you go in knowing very, very little, if anything at all, about what you're going in to do. So you get there and then you get briefed, and sometimes you get to see some concept art, and then off you go, and you have to make some quick decisions about who this character is and how they sound and how they interact with their world. So yeah, I think that kind of answers your question. It's all very applicable.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I guess there is some major differences, especially in terms of the run-up time. And I was hoping to ask you about that, but I definitely think that was a very very eloquent answer, because I think further to what you said right at the beginning about there being some sort of like, dare I say, snobbery about maybe video game voice acting roles in the 90s and things like that, and treating it with the same legitimacy as a role outside of that and that sort of mentality, I think, is definitely what's helped break down so many barriers for so many people and roles and things like that. So that's very well put. One of the things I wanted to ask regarding that then was, just a little bit more about the process, especially for people listening who might not have an understanding of it. When you're offered a role, you've kind of alluded to it already, you don't really have time to spend drawing up inspiration and taking in lots of things for weeks through osmosis and things like that. So what would be like the kind of standard, procedure for somebody reaching out to you and saying, we want you to voice a character? Is it like a months in advance? Is it weeks? How does it work often?
It really depends. It depends on the size of the developer. It depends on the size of the game. Whether it's a small indie developer or a AAA developer. I mean, it's all kind of similar. Sorry, excuse me. I mentioned before, Jack, I've got a little bit of a cold, so got a little bit of a frog in my throat as well. Usually what happens is the developer or a voice production studio who works with the developer will get in contact with my agent, who will then get in contact with me and say, hey, Doug, these guys are interested in working with you. Are you interested and available? And and then I say yes or no. And I normally say yes, because I like to work. I have said no on occasion to work, if it was something that I felt compromised my own ethical stance, as it were, or if I felt that I was being cheated. I did that recently. It wasn't for a video game though. It was for something that it was a corporate thing, and it was the copy that they shared with me was very clearly a commercial, and they weren't calling it a commercial, and they were only wanting to pay me a really low rate, and I just knew that it was something that I should be getting 2 or 3 extra zeros on the end of it for. And so in the end, I had to say, no, I won't do this, because I know you're pulling a fast one.
Fast one. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. But normally what happens is they get in touch with me through my agent, and then if I like what I see, I agree, and then we go from there. Occasionally, a developer will reach out straight to me via Twitter or something else and just say, hey, Doug, we've got this project, and we're really interested in talking with you about this. And then I'll go back and say, right, tell me more. Well, eventually it'll have to go to my agent, because this is the beauty of having an agent as an actor. Students often ask me, do you have to have an agent to be an actor? I say, no, you don't, but it really helps, because if you have an agent, then they talk the money.
Yeah.
So it leaves you. Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely fine here.
If the agent can talk money and you don't have to, then you can just get on with being the artist and do the stuff you do well. So that's how they usually get in touch with me.
Is there ever like a, I'm sure there's varying degrees of scope and the likes, but is there been many opportunities where developers have said to you, what do you envision for this character? And like, you've come up with like lots of suggestions. There's lots of back and forth, or are they normally very, very clear? They've got like a little mood board or a couple of things.
They're usually pretty clear. They know what they want for the character, and often that's why they reach out to me, because they've seen work that I've done or heard work that I've done in the past that is similar to what they're looking for. But occasionally, a developer will approach me for whatever reason and ask me to do something different. I mean, there's some games I've done where I've been able to play a bit more. I usually get cast as at least in video games, I usually get cast as the reluctant hero, or the anti-hero kind of character. You know, the gruff-voiced guy who does what has to be done despite not wanting to do it. You know, the soldier of fortune or something like that. So that's what I tend to get cast as. But I did a game called The Book of Unwritten Tales, and I played Nate Bonnet in that, who is a great character. He was kind of a Han Solo type character, you know, tongue-in-cheek, sarcastic, cynical, really funny, and that was great fun. Another game called Randall's Monday, I got to play two different characters, one guy named Mel and another guy named Bob. And I can't remember which was which, but one of them was a pawn shop owner, and I think he sort of had a you know, New York kind of twang going on. So, you know, just fun stuff.
Yeah, I was interested in that. I was about to mention that, you know, you've had a vast and fruitful career with loads of roles. You were in a Conflict Desert Storm too, right? That's one of my favorite games ever made, by the way. But there's one role in particular that I guess it would be remiss to avoid, and it would be Geralt, right? He's the guy that I think just seems to draw in and capture the hearts of so many people. And have you got any sort of, like, you know, you've had conversations with hundreds, if not thousands, of people about this, surely, and I'm sure they've told you what Geralt means to them. Have you got any particular idea, or what do you think it is that draws in so many people to Geralt as a character?
Oh, that's a really good question. And
thanks.
I think, well, I've never been asked that actually before, and that's a hard one to answer as well. I think part of it is that he's just a really cool guy. I mean, he's tough. He doesn't take any BS from anybody except Yen. I think part of it is that the world that Anders Sapkowski created in the books is so rich and wonderful, and it taps into that Eastern European mythology and folklore that's so rich as well, and it mirrors J.R.R. Tolkien's work. I mean, Sapkowski's his own man, and the Witcher world is its own world, but they are undeniably similar. And so anybody who loves that kind of fantasy world will gravitate to The Witcher as a game and as a series of books and as the new Netflix series as well. It's high fantasy at its best. So I think that in terms of the game, that was the thing that pulled people in. Why they loved Geralt is because he's a badass. I mean, he looks great. He's cool. He's good with a sword. He's pretty fortunate with the ladies. You know, what's not to like about the guy? Well, I suppose, you know, he's a bit gruff and, you know, rough under the collar, as they say, but, you know, probably doesn't smell so good all the time. But, you know, he's just a fantastic character.
I think it's, I love it's funny because he's a very uncompromising character on the surface, but when you realize that there, despite the reluctance, he does often do his best, and I think that's very interesting that for somebody who does seem to be so straight up with things, he's captured people from all over the world, different age groups. It's almost universal, and I love that. Well, thanks for the kind words about that question. One thing I did want to do, which is it's a bit manipulative maybe, is I didn't want to ask you a very, very, very common question, but instead what I want to ask you is, what do you think is the most commonly asked question? What do you think? What is it? Maybe not so much like people who've interviewed you before, but the fans. What is it that what do they want to know about Geralt? Like, is there anything that stands out?
Yen or Triss?
Is it? Is it really? And what is the official stance?
Well, I have my personal stance. I can't speak for Geralt. Or I can speak
I was gonna
for Geralt,
say,
but
yeah.
I won't.
Yeah.
I'm very careful to not place my own opinions in the mouth of Geralt.
Yeah.
And sometimes that gets me in a little bit of trouble because sometimes people want to hear certain things come out of Geralt's mouth, and I just go, sorry, I can't say that, and then they think I'm disagreeing or that I don't support something, but it's actually just that I can't make Geralt say that. But my feeling about Yen or Triss, personally, I like them both. I love them both. I mean, they're both fantastic women, fantastic characters, but they're very different. And I always gravitate towards Triss for myself. And the reason is because Yen feels just a little bit too much like a nagging mother, which some people will want. Absolutely. Sure. That's a valid choice. But Triss feels more like a friend. A friend with benefits.
Yeah, for sure.
And so in my own life, I've always gravitated towards, with girlfriends in the past and things like that, I've always gravitated towards redheads, but also towards, friends. It's romantic relationships were all about friendships, really. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And certainly my own in real life relationship is she's my best friend, so that's why I gravitate towards Triss. It has that feeling of a more equal kind of relationship based on friendship.
Yeah, exactly. Less Freudian, perhaps. Okay.
Yeah. Well, the Yen relationship is much more of a passion. It's
right.
High passion, which brings with it all kinds of things.
Drama, I suppose, but there's certainly, I love that there's a very complex argument to be had with both parties, and it's something that, in a way, it would be unfair to just use the Geralt voice to end it. But the Geralt voice is something I did want to ask about because you're able to service your fans in a way where they can pay to get Geralt's words spoken on a whim. A fantastic thing, great for gifts and things like that. Do you have any memory of the funniest, something that you've read that's not been really bad? Because earlier you mentioned that you've gone, I can't say that. Is there anything that you've just gone, this is crazy? Maybe I don't know if there's any memory of a standout one that you've gone, what is this? In a respectful way, of course.
Yeah. Well, I'm so sorry. My voice is actually just full of cold. I did say something in a video message once, something to the effect of, honestly, he turns himself into a pickle. Funniest shit I've ever seen. It's all a reference to Rick and Morty, of course. But I did that, and that went over really well. I proposed to a woman for a guy in the Geralt voice on a video message. Yeah.
Do you know how it went?
I seem to remember that she said yes.
Well, then that's very good. Yeah. Yeah. So we can laugh about that now. Now that we know it's gone well, that's.
It was kind of one of those moments though, where I literally messaged the guy back and said, Are you sure? You sure you want me to do this? It's usually something that people do in person, you know.
Yeah, well, it worked. So very unorthodox technique, but yeah. So shouts out to that. Shouts out to that guy. I was going to ask about the other roles. You mentioned a couple. Geralt was a large undertaking. There's a lot of words there. Would you say that he was the most challenging? And if not, who?
Was he the most challenging in terms of the amount of things to
I
say?
suppose, yeah, just the undertaking in general, yeah.
Well, what I can say, certainly, I mean, there were a lot of words, particularly for Witcher 3. I think that Geralt was a real challenge for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons was because when I first started voicing Geralt, what CD Projekt wanted for the sound of the voice, which I could achieve, but it was really difficult. It was really low in my register. And we also were recording for long days. So by the end of the day, quite often my voice was just wrecked. So it was challenging just from a pure technique and physical standpoint. Now that got easier over the years as my vocal cords adjusted to that register. And now I slip into the Geralt voice very, very easily. It's a bit like an athlete, you know, training for a particular event or something, you know. You break down those muscles and they build back up stronger and more flexible and everything else. So that's kind of what I've done over the years with Geralt. But I think the other thing that was really challenging about him is this concept that he has no emotion. So a common note for a director to give me when I'm recording for Geralt, and this has become less so over the years, obviously. Well, maybe not obviously. A common note is flatten him out, Doug.
Right.
Less emotion. You know, I'm an actor and I'm a human being, and you know, emotion is part of what we deal in. And this whole idea that Geralt is emotionless, I never agreed with. I understand, but I never agreed with it. The way I always saw it was that he does, of course, have emotion, but because of the nature of the job that he does, he has to squish it.
Right.
He has to press it down. He has to. He can't be ruled by his emotion. So through his training, through the trial of the grasses, through everything, what he has learned to do is suppress. Yeah. And he does it very, very effectively. But you know, we do have these in the Witcher game series. You'll if you play from 1 to 3, and in the DLC, you'll see a very definite progression of Geralt as an emotional being. As the writers became more confident in allowing that part of him to exist, and as they acknowledged that it could exist alongside the tough guy. And I like to think I was part of that because I was constantly, either consciously or unconsciously, pushing that envelope, which is why I got the note quite frequently, flatten him out, Doug, flatten him out. So I think that was a challenge, the trying to make him a three-dimensional character through the voice, without giving it too much emotion. I think that was a big part of the challenge.
A lot of restraint needs to be practiced there the whole time, and for so many words over such a long period of time, it's like a real discipline, I suspect, right? Not to answer for you, but yeah. No.
Well, it's a craft. Yeah, I mean, discipline you could say as well. Art you could say. It's all those things. I mean, that's what acting is. It's all of those. Yeah.
It's a fantastic answer, and I like I said, I didn't want to make an assumption, but I suspected it might have been the most challenging. I wanted to speak to you a little bit more about video games in general. We spoke about the origins way back at the beginning of the call. But let's just talk a bit more contemporary. Have you had much opportunity to play some of the games over the last few years? Like, we've had like stories that have sort of broke ground, and I mean they're being adapted to like TV, like The Last of Us, and there's like God of War and things like that. And what's the last video game that you remember playing that's really captivated you?
Well, it might sound crazy, but I don't have much time to play games.
Right.
I love playing games, but the amount of time I usually have is so short that it's not enough time to really get into anything for any serious amount of time. So I end up not.
Yeah.
I have been fortunate to play some games all the way through, but I've mostly dipped in and out of various things. So I played a bit of God of War, played a bit of Red Dead Redemption 2, I played a bit of Spider-Man, I've played a bit of Wolfenstein 2, I've played a bit of I played most of what was it called? Something Night in the Woods.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Night in the Woods. Great game. Fantastic game. Loved
Yeah,
it.
small indie project with anthropomorphic animals, right? That's the
Yeah. Really cool. I never got to the end of it. I think I'm about 3/4 of the way through. Most recently, I've been playing Tales of Iron. But that's partly because I'm the narrator in it.
Right. Yeah.
And because it's a great game as well. It's a great, fantastic game. I love it. It's beautiful artwork and really, really challenging combat as well. I played all the way through Assassin's Creed Origins.
Yeah, that's a large undertaking, actually. There's a lot.
It
of
is
that
a large
game.
undertaking, yeah. I mean, that was fits and starts over the course of nearly a year, I think. But I really enjoyed that. And part of the reason I kept going back to it was because one of the challenges I find with games is with myself is that time factor. I'll start something and I'll just I'll play 5 or 6 hours and I've learned how to do all the things that you need to do with the character, how to jump, how to roll, how to fight, how to phase through walls or whatever it is. And then I won't be able to play for 3 or 4 weeks. And I'll go back to it and I can't remember how to play. So then I have to spend the hour that I have relearning just how to play it.
Yeah.
And I don't get anywhere else, and then it's another 3 or 4 weeks. And then I come back and I go, oh man, I can't remember how to play again.
Yeah.
So that's the problem I have. But yeah, I got through Assassin's Creed Origins, a game that I absolutely love. I played it 3 times and it's a game, but it's not really a game. It's more like an interactive graphic novel. I love it. Is a game called What Remains of Edith Finch.
That is a superb game. That's one of I think the year that came out, that was my favorite game I played all year. Yeah, absolutely sublime.
Absolutely. It was the same for me. I didn't know what it was. I just started playing it because I was on a BAFTA Games judging panel, and it was one of the games that I had to interact with in order to cast my vote and stuff. And I just started it, and I was like, "Oh, this is cool. Okay, wait, nothing's killing me." Yeah. And it took me a while to clock what it was. And once I did, I was just like, "This is awesome." And then it was just about the story, and I just loved the story. Like I literally cried when I got to the end.
It's a very and another crucial factor for those who haven't played it, who might be listening. It's a fairly short experience. It's like maybe 3 hours long or something like that. If you take your time, 4 hours maybe. But it's one afternoon game, and that helps a lot because, like you mentioned earlier, there's a big issue with momentum for a lot of people, especially with like huge open worlds where not only do you have to like relearn controls, but you have to like do some orienteering to figure out where you are on the map. I have to, I jumped back into Red Dead Redemption 2 after a month and I didn't know where I was or what to do. Or anything.
Oh, I know.
So that was a nice surprise. Night in the Woods and What Remains of Edith Finch. Yeah.
I have to say though, I mean, there are games that I can jump back into quite quickly. I don't do it often enough, but because the mechanics are not simple, but simple enough that
Yeah.
there's not this huge, massive, sprawling world to try and figure out where you're at it again. I mean, one of the games I do dip in and out of several times a year is Victor Vran, which is a Wired Productions game. And I am slightly biased because, again, I play the main character, Victor Vran. But it's just a beautiful little game. It's kind of, Diablo-like and fantastic world. And it's easy to jump back into it.
Yeah, I find that, dare I say it, but yeah, like you sort of the more I grow and family and kids and stuff, the more I am I guess the beautiful thing is I'm revisiting older games that are maybe smaller in scope and a bit more bites. As I've been playing Fable 2 over the last couple of, which is like over 10 years old and things like that. But I loved it. Video games have come on so much in terms of the scope and the graphics, but it's almost like, if you watched a film from the 80s or a movie or from the 70s or something, you wouldn't say, I can only watch the new stuff. What a dull world that would be. So it's nice to jump back into the huge plethora of offerings that we've had over the past 10 years, 15 years.
I think that's a really good analogy, though, the films, going back to a film from the 80s or something. I had this revelation recently. I can't remember what the film I was watching was, but it was a film from the 80s. And I was just really enjoying watching it for the story. But I suddenly realized how slow it was. How laborious the storytelling was compared, not then. Then it was exciting and new and thrilling and everything else. But compared to films now, which are, it's 1,000 things a second being thrown at you, And in the past, they took more time to develop the story, to tell the story, to develop the characters. Now they're cookie cutter characters quite often that we all understand, we all can relate to, we all get it. We see the character, we get it straight away. Bam! I know who that guy is.
Yeah.
So games are the same. The games have become now something that are just different. So dipping into the older games can often be a really nice, like slipping into a nice warm bath,
Yeah, and there's no sort of, I don't have to log into like some online servers to play my single player game or something like that. I think actually in Fable 2 there's like a chest in it that I clicked on, and it said, this is the chest from your hero for Fable 1. Visit fable2.com for more information. I like so some of these aspects have aged in a way where I'm like, oh, a website inside the game. And so I'm interested to see in 20 years time how people will look back at some of their contemporary titles and things like that. So I mean,
they'll be like, what, a controller? What's that? Because they'll have implants,
we could be in that world, I mean, it's been a really great conversation, Doug, and I guess we're talking about the sort of industry shifting and changing a lot, and so because of that, I know you've been asked this a few times, but information changes. I don't say it gets outdated, but certainly techniques and things like that can shift. So for anyone listening who's particularly interested in your journey and your output, do you have any advice that you'd give to people who are looking to get into some roles, perhaps in video games or otherwise? You mentioned having an agent is really good, but would you have advice for people who want to get maybe specifically into like video game voice acting?
Oh yeah, we could have a 6-hour conversation about that. My advice to anybody who wants to get into video game voiceover acting is, do it. It's great. It's great fun. It's a fantastic industry to be part of. What I will say is it's very, very competitive. More competitive now than ever before. When I first started, you had to go into a professional recording studio at a voice production company. to record for video games. You had to, because it had to be the good equipment, the professional microphones, the professional software, recorded by professional engineers and designers who knew what they were doing with audio. Now, home studios are common. You can get yourself set up with a home studio, a basic kit for, I mean, if you're starting from absolute scratch with nothing, I would say for less than £1,500, maybe even less. It just depends on, you know, how cheap you want to go. But, you know, you can buy a professional microphone or professional level microphone for under £150. USB hubs, 100 to 150.
Yeah.
A computer that can run the software between 400 and 1,000, depending on what you want and, you know, how spec'd out you want it to be. Software, you can download free software to record with. It's professional level. You just have to teach yourself how to use it. So yeah, I mean, anybody can set themselves up. The point I'm making is that what that means is that there are people like me out there who trained as professional actors who are doing this professionally. And then there are people who buy some basic kit, go onto the pay-to-play sites, and put together a very basic voice reel, and then put themselves out there, who, you know, people who have no training, no experience, they just want to do it. And then you have everything in between. You have those people, and you have people like me, and you have everybody in between who are trying to get in and out. So it's a very, very competitive industry to try to get into. So know that when you're going in, it will be very, very challenging. Other advice I have is, this is my personal opinion, and there are lots of examples of people who didn't do this, who just are very talented, you know, like Troy Baker. He started out as a musician and fell into voice acting almost by accident, but he's just good. He's very talented, but he didn't have any real, or at least as far as I know, he didn't have any formal actor training or experience before doing some voiceover work. My recommendation is to get some experience as an actor, because you know, unless you're someone who's super talented and very fortunate as well, you need a little bit of formalized training, partly because the directors are going to talk to you as an actor. And so having an understanding of what a director might be looking for in a given moment, that's something that comes with either experience or with some basic training. So go get yourself an acting class. It could be an evening class that runs for 6 weeks, or go get yourself involved with your local amateur dramatic society. Experience is as good as training in many respects. It can only help. It certainly can't hurt. So if you want to be a voice actor, that's my advice. Get some acting experience and training on stage or on camera, but you know, it doesn't matter. Just get some acting experience.
Wired. Unplugged.
That was me from the past.
It was you.
And yeah,
It was you.
I was there. And Doug
Your
Cockle.
house, dude. What's with the house? The location has totally
I
changed.
told you, didn't I? I told you. And Doug Cockle gave us a lot of info, specifically about acting, to become an actor. And yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting for me to hear from somebody who went into the video game sphere. Like, well, they didn't, like, when Doug was a mere pup, video game voice acting wasn't really a thing. But nowadays, it's like when you watch like RuPaul's Drag Race and that, loads of the new drag queens are like, I grew up watching Drag Race, and I'm thinking, oh my God. So it's like that, isn't it? So there'll be people that are like inspired by the likes of Doug. Yeah, they're inspired by David Hayter as Solid Snake and all of that ilk. And they'll want to be video game voice because it's a viable career, but it wasn't back then. So it was cool to hear that perspect, perspective.
I think the thing I really liked that he said was the whole point of, hey, if you want to get into voice acting, you may as well go the whole hog and just do the full acting gig, become an actor first, and then develop the voice.
Yeah.
Which I think is sound advice, really, right? Because I think when you look at voice actors in the booth as well, there's so many hand gestures, and you really have to learn to act and get into character without that much space to actually run around and swing a sword, and it's
right. You're dead right, and getting I'm saying you're dead right. Like I've won an Oscar. Like I'm like going, yes, Aaron, absolutely. No, but it's like I think the thing that he was mentioning on that point was that the sort of collaborative effort of being able to bounce off somebody else helps you build that confidence. So then when you are, waving your arms in an isolated booth, at least you're like, I've done it before and I can do it again. So so shouts out to Doug Cockle. What a legend.
He's a legend, and I spoke to him once before, and I said, so Doug, just out of interest, off the record, this was after it was finished, before everyone was going home. It's like, so, what is the secret to voice acting? And he just said, don't drink milk. Okay. And essentially, it makes your voice clacky, and it gives you that sort of sound.
Yeah.
So
we
don't
should have
drink
talked
milk.
to him about the dairy-free milk alternatives. Maybe oat milk's okay.
Plant-based.
Yeah,
Milk is plant-based.
Yeah, we need to make sure that we get a follow-up on that, and we can also ask him next time to record his own darned intro segment. Yeah. So, well, that was episode. Is it 1? The first structured episode, as we're calling it. Thank you very much. So we've actually been working hard to record episodes ahead of time in terms of the interview segments. So next week, we're not absolutely sure who it's going to be, because we've recorded a couple that are really cool. We got some good stuff on the way, but we will let you know what's new in Google, what's new in Wired. Not in Google, not within Google. We're not in any corporate beanbags, but we'll let you know, right? So,
and I think at one point we may get to the bottom of who is doing the jingles.
Yeah, who is the ghostwriter that has worked with Gladys Knight and the Pips, Rick Astley, Gloria Gaynor, and whoever else? But we might get to the bottom of that actual talent. So, more on that very, very soon. I hope you enjoyed what you heard or saw. And we'll be back next week. So thanks very much for checking out the very first structured episode of Wired Unplugged. Aaron, let's go and have a drink or something. Woo-hoo. Goodbye.
Wired Unplugged.